Tomb of night, flame of the void, burning bright. Chains of life are broken free. Death itself now kneels to me.
In the earliest editions of Dungeons & Dragons, the notion of a lich was broader, and the restrictions we take for granted today simply weren't there. In the first edition Monster Manual, the lich was described as a powerful magic user who has sought to exist beyond death. There was no phrase stating that a lich must be a wizard, or forbidding priests, druids, or psionicists. Magic user was a term that covered anything from an arcane scholar to a priest of obscure rites. Van Richten's Guide to the Lich in 1991 deepened the template, detailing arcane rituals and the creation of a phylactery. The idea of a priestly lich was a neglected possibility until 2nd edition, when Ravenloft introduced specialist liches tied to different power sources, divine, psionic, or planar. While in the Forgotten Realms we discovered the Bane Lich, priests transformed by their god's will into divine undead servants. These were not mere wizards adopting clerical rites, they were clerics in their own right, walking the razor's edge between devotion and blasphemy, granted their cursed immortality by the power of the dark god Bane. There was also a flourish of more exotic concepts, psionic liches, for instance, whose phylacteries bound to not just a soul but the full mental essence of their being. These ideas, scattered between modules and supplements, showed that lichdom was open to variations based on a template. By the arrival of 3rd edition, their scope had become more narrowed. The Monster Manual redefined the lich explicitly as an arcane template. While technically a cleric could meet the prerequisites, the caster level, the feats, the crafting capabilities, the language, the imagery, and the example stat block strongly leaned towards wizardry. 4th edition codified lichdom further as an arcane paragon path, and 5th edition hasn't strayed beyond the archetype either. Liches are undead archmages. Outside of homebrew sources, a cleric lich is now an anomaly. They shouldn't be, though. These days, wizards embody the seekers of forbidden knowledge, and clerics, by contrast, are expected to have their afterlife managed by their god. For them to pursue lichdom is not merely unnatural, it's blasphemy. It's an act of deliberate defiance against divine order. And perhaps this is why designers quietly phased the divine lich from the mainstream. Along with the divine Bane Lich, the Forgotten Realms lore adds Archliches and Baelnorns. These are elven undead sustained by divine or positive energy rather than negative, serving as protectors rather than predators. Ravenloft's variant liches lean into ideas that obsession is not limited to arcane study, but extends to religious zealotry and psychic dominance. The moment we step beyond the skeletal caricature of the lich as simply a rotting wizard, we find a far richer story. Lichdom is not a fixed condition, it is a mutable state. In the case of divine lichdom, there's a dark covenant between the mortal worshipper, gifted with high natural wisdom and powers of observation, and their intuition, a beacon to the higher power that sends signs and portents the worshipper detects around them. The path to undeath may be horrific and require a deep, fatalistic sense of iron-willed, fanatical faith, but at the same time, all pain of their undead condition may be masked by the power of their god. They may even be able to suppress their lich touch paralysis and heal a living creature, or keep the flesh from decaying, but they're still undead spellcasters. Bane liches, priests transformed into liches by Bane's direct intercession, are perhaps the best known examples. Their undeath is not the byproduct of secret alchemy or arcane hubris, but an explicit gift of tyranny. For a Bane lich, undeath is both an honor and a curse, proof of their god's favor and a permanent binding to Bane's will. It's not simply a cleric who studies necromancy, it's a priest who deliberately chooses undeath as the ultimate form of devotion to a god of dominion. Ravenloft's Van Richten's Guide to the Lich acknowledges different variants as well. Liches whose devotion is not arcane obsession, but spiritual zealotry, whose phylacteries are sanctified shrines, or holy relics rather than hidden pockets, or lockets, or gem-encrusted spellbooks. Forgotten Realms adds the Baelnorns and Elven Archliches, where divine lichdom becomes not an act of corruption but of guardianship, and the remnant battle-scarred arcanists and diabolists of Narfel's dark pasts. These figures make clear that lichdom need not be synonymous with horror. It can be framed as sacrifice, service, or a transcendence of mortality. The Baelnorn are all elven elders who've bound their souls to a sacred grove or a shrine with permanent enchantment. They live in a strangely preserved and desiccated form. They focus solely on protecting their ancestral home and their elven kin. They hold a knowledge that is centuries old, but care little for the affairs of other cultures. Baelnorn don't move around a lot, but they can be powerful spellcasters of any background, nature, arcane, or divine. They're not, a force for evil. They live in service to a people, a cause, and a place. The divine liches are exceptions, a bit illogical. If lichdom is a refusal of the cycle of life and death, then how does a cleric reconcile that with their faith? The answer depends on the god in question. For Bane, the motive is obvious. It's control, domination, and the extension of tyranny beyond death. For Merkel or Val Sharoon, two other gods, liches are proof of victory over mortality. For a god of light or of life, such as Corellian Lorathian or Lathander, the equation is more complicated. The Baelnorn shows one possibility. Undeath is a sacred vigil, sustained by positive energy rather than necrotic drain. But such cases are rare precisely because they require a deity to bend the laws of existence in ways that contradict their usual ethos. Still, if a monk or high life and level can attain purity and immortality that way, there's no reason a high level cleric of a good lane deity couldn't just stay alive well past a normal lifespan because their god wills it so. You don't need anything special other than that. As always, leave it up to your dungeon master to decide as fits their own homebrew campaign and setting. Imagine a priest of Amornator, dedicated to the preservation of the dawn, the spark of life, creativity, a faith that attracts optimistic, go-getter personalities who bind their souls in service to a holy cause. Through ritual and covenant, they transform, not into a skeletal nightmare, but into an ageless guardian, radiant, kind of terrifying. Their presence is a paradox, a wizened and wise elder, calm and nimble, whose touch restores life, whose magic binds wounds even as their own body endures beyond the natural cycle. They could serve as eternal guardians of temples or sanctuaries or cosmic thresholds. They are the wizards from the Lord of the Rings. They're the ageless ones that can wander freely, involving themselves in long, complicated, and dangerous politics of dragons, liches, and other wizards. The positive energy lich, sometimes called a Vitageist, sustains itself on the radiant force of raw life. At first glance, that seems contradictory. Positive energy is vitality, healing, and creation. Yet D&D cosmology allows for some paradoxes. Positive energy is a force of raw life, capable of both creation and destruction. Too much life force, uncontrolled, can burn a living being as surely as undeath consumes the dead. Positive energy is not inherently benign. It can overwhelm and burn. Such liches may find that their own vitality becomes a dangerous weapon. A Vitageist might be a benevolent savior to some, or a tyrant to others. Radiant energy restores the damage done to their body, and they can move around quite naturally, but their body is still dead. The nerves don't connect to anything. Their heart is still in their chest, but prevented from decaying or feeling pain. Stepping into any anti-magic zone in the front gaze of the beholder's central eye, for instance, the Vitageist would be stunned by agonizing pain and collapse quickly until removed because they would drop dead. Lichdom is not a species, nor a discipline. It's a condition, a choice, an act of unmaking and remaking, a terrible curse anchored in a phylactery or equivalent vessel, and each species that learns how to do it brings their own culture, physiology, and metaphysics into that transformation. From the earliest days of Dungeons & Dragons, designers and storytellers have explored these possibilities. So, now's a good time to talk about the Dracolich, which has not been around that long in Forgotten Realms history, though it's possible other Dracoliches were created by other means, including divine or profane, in the continent's past, I suppose. Dragons are already creatures of immense age and power. Their ambition makes the step to lichdom unsurprising. A Dracolich is not merely an undead dragon, it's a living ruin, a force of arcane and necrotic mastery. Their transformation, perfected in Forgotten Realms in the Draconomicon, is an act of cultic devotion, a pact between a worm and a necromancer, often at the behest of the dragon itself. The phylactery of a Dracolich is often an artifact of unimaginable worth, a gemstone filled with their soul, a relic hoarded through centuries, or a shrine corrupted to serve as an eternal vessel. Unlike humanoid liches, Dracoliches do not shed their scales entirely. Even in undeath, they retain fragments of flesh, wing membranes, or claws, trophies of their former glory. The result is something more like a corpse, a living nightmare of ancient might sustained through natural death. Dracoliches bring with them a scope of horror and narrative power that few liches can match. To face one is to stand before an ancient will that has transcended mortality, still thinking in centuries and plotting in epochs. Their presence reshapes not only the battlefield, but the politics and the landscapes of the campaign world. Their environmental regional influence impacts the flow of the weave of magic. It creates spectacular effects expressing the primary energy flowing through the primordial serpent's blood. In the case of the Dracolich, this is a vile aura of undeath. Creatures within 1 mile of its lair have disadvantage on saving throws against death. The same 1 mile area is lightly obscured by sapping pale fog, and any creatures that finishes a long rest in that area must make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or gain 1 level of exhaustion, which could result in a trapped creature facing certain death. Around the lair of a Dracolich, not a single natural living creature stirs, sings, or moves. They flee the area the moment the Dracolich arrives. Demons and devils are already immortal in their native realms, reforming endlessly. For some, lichdom offers a way to circumvent that endless cycle, to anchor themselves permanently, to exist free from the endless renewal of their kind. A pit fiend might bind itself to a phylactery to escape ultimate annihilation in the blood war. A Yugoloth could embrace lichdom as a means to transcend servitude and anchor itself to the primordial plane, to prevent its soul being claimed by former masters or powers it owes a soul debt to. These fiendish liches are beings are doubly cursed, immortal not only in life but beyond the natural order of their own plane. To destroy them may require not just mortal weaponry, but a journey into the deepest layers of the outer planes, to discover the secrets of their creation and the best means, the kryptonite required to banish them from ever regenerating again. Mind flayers have perhaps the most chilling variation, the Elhoon, introduced in Monstrous Compendium Spelljammer Appendix. The Elhoon is an illithid that has rejected the will of the Elder Brain in favour of lichdom. This is an act of self-determination as terrifying as it is unnatural. The result of the creature is unparalleled in horror, a squid-faced lich whose phylactery must be a crystalline jar filled with preserved brains, a living fragment of illicit psionics bound for eternity. Aberrant liches need not be limited to illithids. A beholder might anchor itself to an obsidian phylactery formed of its own crystallized eye rays. A Githyanki might tether their essence to the astral plane, becoming a lich that is half mind, half void. Such examples expand the scope of what a lich can be, taking it beyond the humanoid wizard stereotype and into the realm of cosmic horror. Imagine awakened plants that weave lichdom into their root systems, binding their souls to groves. Constructs that embed necromantic lattices into their very frames. Fiendish liches who encase themselves in infernal reliquaries. Fae who crystallize themselves in song and memory, living monuments to undeath. Each variation brings with it distinct aesthetics, thematic resonance, and a unique set of narrative opportunities. A campaign in which all the liches are identical is a poor campaign. Throw in the unexpected, a Baelnorn who offers aid, a Dracolich whose hoard is a tomb of forgotten kings turned into wights, an Elhoon whispering madness from the void. The spellcaster who has mastered the art of creating soul gems can transform themselves into a demi-lich. The object into which the 8 soul gems are set is largely unimportant. Often the soul gems become jeweled eyes and teeth in the lich's skull, but they could also become joints of a hand or discs in the lich's spine. When the soul is transformed into the gems, the rest of the body crumbles away. Demi-liches still require a phylactery along with the 8 gems remaining intact. With these objects united, it will return from destruction within a week or so. The phylacteries of demi-liches may be jewels, bone fragments, or fragments of planar reality, whatever that means. Pathfinder's flexible law regarding phylacteries allows for a wide array of soul cage forms. It's entirely plausible for a lich's phylactery to be magically attuned crystal, specifically given that same lich-making rituals might involve magical crystals to bind and attune souls. Most rituals of soul binding involve crystals at some stage in the casting, and all dragon forms of the casting must include a rare crystal type. When we take the long view of lichdom, from folklore, corpses, and necromantic warlords to Baelnorns, arch-liches, and even radiant Vitageists, we say they all share the same issue, the requirement for a vulnerable phylactery. To control a lich's phylactery is to control the lich itself. It takes a very arrogant and narcissistic personality to become a lich to begin with, and they tend to do anything to avoid being destroyed permanently. Vecna is the archetypical lich, and his mythology demonstrates the dangers of unchecked ambition. In every edition, he embodies both mastery and incompleteness. He becomes the Whispered One, the Maimed Lord, always powerful, yet always fragmented. He's the Lich as God Emperor, showing how immortality becomes hunger without end. Vecna is a force of evil, for sure, but an argument can be made that his ultimate goal is actually an overall benefit, as he works to prevent knowledge falling into the hands of idiots who would try to make use of magic that can destroy reality. Acererak, by contrast, is the Lich as trapmaker. He has a particular hatred of adventurers, and his dungeons are his legacy, monuments to his cunning and cruelty. He's not remembered for ruling empires, but for crafting horrors that endure for centuries. Ayuz, the Old, straddles the line between a lich and a demigod. His semi-divinity complicates his undeath. He's no mere spellcaster clinging to existence, but a lord of evil who may be destined for godhood the moment his story as an incarnate mortal ends. To run a lich well, a dungeon master must play the long game. The lich may appear only briefly, manipulating pawns and minions, retreating when threatened and returning when the timing is perfect. They are masters of magic, so when they move, they do so in disguise. They're also obsessed with arcane study or fanatically focused on their god. Much like dragons, the Lich favours long periods of seclusion, emerging once more with a brand new scheme it's cooked up from arcane study and a lust for experimentation and destroying a few thousand of the living. Motivation is everything. A Lich is not a wandering predator, it's a schemer. They build lairs just as defensive measures, but as reflections also of their psyche. A paranoid Lich creates labyrinths within labyrinths, every door trapped. A scholarly Lich fills halls with libraries, laboratories, and preserved specimens. A benevolent Lich consecrates a crypt into a shrine, accessible only to those deemed worthy. A martial Lich may have become a Lich due to an arcane ritual, but may still be just a highly trained and decorated knight rather than a spellcaster. There are rumours of immortal hunters devoted to killing dragons, created by the elves long ago, but I think those are more like mummies. Every Lich was once a person with choices, fears, and a reason to endure. Every Lich can be traced back to a moment of weakness or obsession. This makes them a prime candidate for stories of a tragic downfall. Can a Lich be restored to mortality? Yeah, certainly. A resurrection spell can restore a Lich's life. This has happened before in published novels. Imagine an ancient Lich who desperately wants to die but can't. Just can't. Adventurers may be tasked with destroying them, but can the Lich be trusted? Liches plan for eternity. They may leave behind vaults of knowledge, dynasties of servants, and entire cults that outlast them. Even destroying the taint of the Lich may remain behind in the landscape as wards, spells, crazed fanatics, and summoned monsters. as major supernatural beings. Liches should have an impact on the environment around them, much like legendary dragons do, within about a mile or two of their lairs. If you could escape death, would you? And at what cost? And what ends would you resort to pay that cost? Sooner or later, a spellcaster will ask that question, and the Lich is the answer. Yes, it says, but at the cost of everything that makes you human. Lichdom is not just the province of humans, elves, dwarves, and dragons. All sapient spellcasting species could have their own version of the ritual process. My name is AJ Pickett. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon. Bonus for Fourthwall members, if you head over there, there's a special extended article on this, which adds another about 4 pages, just going over the details of liches for you, all different variant kinds. Thanks for listening, everyone, and enjoy the music.
Whispers rise in the tomb of a night, flame of the void burning bright. Chains of life are broken free. Death itself now kneels to me. From the grave I rise unchained, crown of ash where gods are slain, soul in crystal, blood in stone, the Lich Queen claims her ashen throne. Raise the dead, the age begins, ash to crown and blood to sins. Her soul is steel, her heart's the pyre, she is the queen, the mistress of ash fire.
Cleric and mage, curse entwined, arcane and holy redefined. I am the god that gods despise, their prayers turn dust beneath my eyes.
Positive light through bone and flame, angel of light, remember her name. The Lich Queen crowned and burning bright, radiant death, eternal night. Raise the dead, the age begins, ash to crown and blood to sins. Her soul is steel, her heart's the pyre, she is the queen, the master of ash fire. She broke the laws that bound the flesh, tore the veil, the wound made fresh. You call her damned, she calls it free.